Baie welkom by ons program Woord Aktueel. Onthou, dis 'n aktualiteitsprogram. En as Kruiskyk die media is wat jy gebruik om bietjie geestelik in te neem, sal hulle ook jou ondersteuning waardeer as jy nie by 'n gemeente betrokke is nie, want my tiende is by my gemeente, so ek is verantwoordelik om dit daar te gee, by die plek, by die skatkis of die skathuis, waar die Here my ingeskakel het. Jy kan gerus net Kruiskyk kontak en dan maandeliks vir hulle bedrag gee. Dit help hulle om op die lig te bly en deel te wees dan van dit wat die Here graag deur Kruiskyk in Suid-Afrika wil doen. Op 'n vorige program het ek met Ben Swartz van die Zionist Federasie gepraat en hy sê Jood wat in Suid-Afrika woon. Ek gaan elke jaar Israel toe, ek gaan volgende jaar 2013 vir die 20ste keer en dit is interessant om met Ben te gesels want daar is 'n betrokkenheid van ons as Christene by die Jode en ons betrokkenheid by die land van Israel en die Joodse volk. Ben, welcome in our program today, and I just in the previous program you introduced yourself. Just a short introduction. Who's Ben Swartz?
Thanks, Pastor. Ben Swartz. I'm South African Jew. I was born in South Africa, and after my schooling, after my school, when I finished my matric, I went off and I lived in Israel for many years. You know, as a Jew, you need to identify and understand who I am and to take the opportunities that are provided to us. And I spent many years in Israel, falling in love with the country, the place, and the people. And through circumstance, I ended up back in South Africa after 5 or 6 years. And subsequently, I went into business in South Africa. In the last few years, have become very involved in the South African Jewish community within the Zionist Federation and affairs representing the relationship between the Jewish community and Israel and the broader South African community. That's where I find myself today. And very passionate about this work that I do. A large part of what I do is working with the Christian communities in South Africa.
Do you do that on a full-time basis?
It's voluntary, but I still have a job and business affairs
of income.
Certainly not my source of income. I would say quite the opposite. I put a lot of time and money into it, so it's a source of you could say almost personal or spiritual fulfillment. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction doing this work, and I believe it's very important. Yeah.
Ben, today, if, as I said, we go to Israel regularly, and I drank water at Jacob's well, and that was quite an experience because it was filled up, and but the Bible says that it would never dry up. And drinking water from that well, for the first time we could go into that area, I realized that, you know, the God of the Bible is the God of Israel, is the God we serve. And that was wonderful. But now when I take a group to Israel, what would you say would you want from a Jewish perspective? What would you want us to be exposed to? Because we want people to understand that God is real. The land of Israel is real. This is where Jesus walked and lived. And this is where many of the old patriarchs lived and fulfilled the calling of God on their lives.
You know, Pastor, I think the most important thing, fundamentally, is just to get to Israel. Because the rest takes care of itself almost. The experiences, whether it's drinking from the well of Jacob, or whether it's going to the Temple Mount or to the Wailing Wall. You know, you put yourself in that situation and you realize that you are tying in with history, real life history that stretches back 2, 3, maybe even up to 4,000 years back. And you get to perceive it, and you get to understand, and you get to taste it, and it brings it all to life, and it makes it all real. And whether you're a Christian or you're a Jew or you're a Muslim, just being there brings everything to life. It makes your belief system resonate with the history that it's built on. the one thing that I pride myself on in Israel is that it's made it the place for everyone. As I mentioned, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew or you're a Muslim, you are welcome to go to your places of worship or your holy places. And that is what is safeguarded in the very existence of Israel today. Why I say it's so important just to get to Israel is the fact of the matter that because of the contemporary politics and the forces, whether you want to call them natural forces or spiritual forces, very often Israel is portrayed in a very, very poor light, particularly in South Africa, because of the political biases and the media biases of South Africa. And if you don't get to go to Israel, and I know not everyone can afford to go there, but if there's a will, there's a way. When you go to Israel, all the propaganda, all the lies of political people or whatever the agendas of different people are literally blown away. I mean that in a positive, and maybe it's sometimes with Israel it's not the right way to say it, but the perceptions, the twisted perceptions that are created by the media in South Africa or around the world are literally moved out of the way when you go there and you see the truth and the reality of Israel for yourself. And you get to taste and realize the contemporary modern world of Israel, and you get to experience the ancient historical biblical world of Israel all in one. And for me, you can't separate the two. The one is an extension of the other. The ancient and the history and the biblical is merely the foundation of the modernity and the real modern world that we see in Israel today. And when you go there, you see it. And no one can lie to you about what it is. That's the magic of Israel.
It's incredible. I know when the first time we came to the Wailing Wall, and then we went in under the hole where they've dug open the whole wall of the temple, and you realize the temple really stood here. And this is where Abraham sacrificed Isaac, or was prepared to sacrifice Isaac.
Right.
I know in the Muslim community they say it was Ishmael, and that's why the mosque is there today, the Dome of the Rock. But it's just interesting to me, the childlike faith of the Jewish people. I was speaking to one time, we had a Jewish guide, and I said to him, are they going to rebuild the third temple? And he said he feels they are. And I said, well, what are you going to do with a mosque? And he said, well, God opened the Red Sea and he knows what to do with a mosque. Now, that's his opinion, and that was very interesting. But what amazed me is my first time in 1989, there was drought. I mean, it was so dry in Jerusalem, you just couldn't believe it. And when we came to the Sea of Galilee, the water level was so low that that's the time they found that boat dating 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And today it's available at
Ginosar, Kibbutz Ginosar, I think.
Kibbutz Ginosar. And it's very interesting to see
beautiful.
that.
It's wonderful.
Just because of the way they built boats in that time, they can prove that it was in that time.
Yeah.
But you get there and you realize that the Bible writes about this. This is real. And they announced in that drought season that they were going to pray for rain. And what amazed me is 10,000 people pitched up at the Wailing Wall that next day with umbrellas. And there was something of the Jewish faith that really blessed me, because Habakkuk 2:4 says that the just shall live by faith. And you see, although the Christian faith and the Jewish faith differ from one another, being the Christians looking at the New Testament included in the Old, or together with the Old, there's something of the reality of that. But what else would you want, let's call us the Gentiles, the Christians, what would you want us to learn of Israel, of the Jewish people? And because the psalmist says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And it's not in the Bible by chance.
I think we need to. We have our differences, as you point out, and as I point out. But we have so much in common. We both hold the books of the Old Testament very close to our hearts, and within that there's so much that we have common ground, and I believe our differences we can manage. You know, it's a matter of you as to how you manage those differences, and I believe it's a very simple way, and that's by focusing on the common, because the differences will sort themselves out in time. If you know what I'm saying, when the Messiah arrives, whether he's returning or whether it's his first time around, we'll know then. So there's no hurry to worry about the eventuality, because we both believe in an eventuality. But in the interim, while we wait for that, let's focus on what we've got common. And it's a great history, and it's a great book, and it's great morals and principles, and that's where we have this common ground. You know, and that's important to me. And what I appreciate is that it is based on this, that in today's age we see conflict. We see conflict between the Jewish world and the Muslim world, and I hope that the Christian world can appreciate and understand our position, because our position is fundamentally based on the Old Testament. It's no coincidence that today the Jews find themselves, after 2,000 years of exile, though there's always been a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, we find ourselves back in Israel, and we find ourselves back in Israel because in Genesis, Abraham is instructed by God to go to the land of Israel. So it's important for us to understand that the Jews are in Israel because we've been told to be there. Yes, there's contemporary history and there's modern history and there's been wars and there's been temples, but the Jews are in Israel fundamentally because God says to Abraham, pick up your belongings and I will show you the place that you will go to, and that place is Israel. And in this day and age, we need to realize that for the Jews to live in Israel, it's an obligation that we have. But we also understand that there's another people that live on the land. And I believe it's actually our responsibility as Jews, as Christians, and as Muslims to work out how we can live there in peace and safety and security, each one of us. And it's a complex problem, and I think it's the responsibility both of Jews and Christians to understand the sensitivity and the challenges associated with this real day modern problem, and to work towards solving it.
When we come there and we see, one year we were there, and we try and plan our tours in a time that there's not too many Jewish holidays or Muslim holy days, and we missed something. And we were there with 300,000 Muslims in the old city.
Right.
I mean, you can't move.
Right.
That's quite an experience for a South African to walk into, because we're not used to that at all. And for us to see the different faiths and people there, and you saying they have to find a solution to live together, because you're not going to get rid of anybody just by hoping it'll disappear.
Wishing a problem away, absolutely not. But I come back and I point at what you just mentioned, is that it's in Israel that you can go as a Christian tourist to as a Christian pilgrim, should we say, to a Jewish state, and there you will find 300,000 Muslims praying in peace and security. I just want to point that out to you. That is the beauty of what Israel actually offers at the end of the day, and what Israel's founding statements is about safeguarding the rights of each and every one. And you just mentioned how you actually experienced it. So that goes to prove, without someone trying to put words in your mouth, that it happens. That's just how it is in Israel. Coming back to what I previously said, and you only get to understand and appreciate the reality when you go there.
The interesting part for me, for instance, the first time at the Wailing Wall was to experience a couple of bar mitzvahs. And we normally take the group, we put on a yarmulke,
Yamis, we call them yamis for
you
sure.
call it yamis, and we go in there out of respect because that's what they want us to do.
Absolutely.
And we just go and stand there and experience something of that. Just tell us a little bit about a bar mitzvah, because people watching this program, they've heard about that, but they've got no idea, because at the age of 12, 13, Jesus did his bar mitzvah.
So the principle in Judaism is a boy comes of age, becomes a man at the age of 13.
At 13.
13.
Some say 12.
Girls at 12.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's a girls' ceremony, although not compulsory, it's optional, called a bat mitzvah. Bar mitzvah is coming of age for a boy, and a bat mitzvah is a coming of age for a girl. Girl at 12, boy at 13.
But they separate at the wall.
They do. There's a section for women and there's a section for men where your prayers happen separately, just in a degree of separation. Those are the traditions. So the bar mitzvah is the ceremony at which a boy comes of age, and what is the whole big, a word we use in Hebrew, or Yiddish, is actually, what's the big chap? What's the whole big story about the bar mitzvah? Is that at that age you become a man, and the expectation within Jewish tradition is at that point you are now allowed to read from the 5 books. And that is the symbol of you becoming of a man. You're allowed to read from the 5 books in public and to lead the service, essentially. So what happens at bar mitzvah is you spend your whole 12th year, the year previous to your ceremony, the boy goes and he learns a portion, a chapter and verse from the 5 books, which is to be read on that particular day when he celebrates.
They don't have to by heart remember all 5 books.
No.
Memorize all 5.
No.
So we thought they had to memorize all 5, because the Muslims are taught to memorize
the Quran,
the whole Quran.
No, the tradition in Judaism is that you learn the portion that on the day of you celebrating your bar mitzvah, there's a set portion that's read every Sabbath, every Saturday of the year. A different portion is read. So on XYZ day, it's your bar mitzvah, you're going to have to read XYZ portion, and you spend the previous year learning all the blessings around it, because you have to pronounce the blessings, and then you have to read your portion, and this is with the whole synagogue, the entire congregation standing around you, and you get to read it, and that's it. And then you by right, by tradition, and probably by law, you are now a man. And that's the whole
You mentioned the 12 and the 13 years. You see, the interesting part to me is that on a 7th day period, or the 8th day, a boy was circumcised.
Right.
And then it was 33 days for the cleansing of his mother. Then on the 40th day, they would dedicate him to the Lord. So for boys.
Right.
But for girls, it was 80 days, double that amount. So it's interesting you mention the age of 13 and the age of 12. Then a mother's cleansing period was 80 days before she could come and present the daughter to the Lord.
Right.
Do you still do that today? Is circumcision still part of
sure is, yeah.
the Jewish tradition?
So I think
now, I know I'm on a very sensitive subject here, because sometimes in the Muslim faith, I don't know if it's in all the Muslims, they circumcise the girls as well. That's not like that in Jewish faith.
No, there's not. There's only circumcision of
men, of boys.
The 2 ceremonies, one for a boy and one for a girl, around the birth. As you mentioned, after 8 days, if the baby's healthy. If the baby's not healthy, or if he's suffering,
of course, that's understood.
If he's prem, or if he's got a little bit of jaundice, then they'll delay the bris, health first, ritual and tradition afterwards. When everything's safe and okay, then they will do the circumcision for the boy.
And is the circumcision done by a priest or by a doctor?
It's done by a mohel. A mohel is a person that has been trained in the art of circumcision.
Because in the African tradition, they take boys away to circumcise them, and I think this year 7 or 8 died.
Yeah, that's the ritual tradition, and they do it to men that are coming of age, I think around the age of 18.
The people don't die in Jewish tradition because it's done medically.
Sometimes you hear that something went wrong, but generally speaking, I mean, when I had a boy, my little boy, he's 8 months old, and he had his circumcision, and the rabbi who's also, my rabbi is also a mohel. So sometimes you get a rabbi or a spiritual leader of the community that is also trained in the art of circumcision. And my rabbi he's quite an old chap, but I can assure you he wouldn't do the circumcision if there was any concern that he would hurt someone. He's just the most wonderful guy. And as much as he's in his late 70s, he picks up the implements, and with these steady hands and this absolute gentleness, he goes and he does the circumcision. And I wouldn't have had anyone else to do it, because he's such a magnificent and spiritual and caring man. But it's a great experience, and it's a tradition, I believe, of within Judaism that will never ever go away. You mentioned Mayach. It's been like this since Abraham placed Isaac on the altar.
Yeah,
that is how it's been. And there we're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, almost 3,800 years.
Yeah. Now a boy has gone through his bar mitzvah. What happens then? Because at the Wailing Wall, it's quite an experience.
Yeah.
Because they separate the men from the women. They throw sweets over.
No, they throw the sweets. Yeah.
The first time I got hit on my head by sweets.
That's it.
And I thought somebody nicely cross with me. And then I understood, because the boys ran and picked up the
little girls
sweets.
Upstairs get naughty. You know, I mean, people are people, and as much as it's a very spiritual experience. I remember I was there for my cousin's bar mitzvah when I was living in Israel, and they had it at the Wailing Wall. And my little cousin, who I'm actually quite close to, little cousin, she's 30 these days. She must have, this is about 20 plus years ago. I'm watching her, she's upstairs there with the sweets, and she's belting everyone with these sweets, being as naughty as can be. But we forgave her for it. It's all part of the fun.
Do you have a big sort of like a
celebration, a big feast afterwards that follows on? And
because when people come in Israel, it's a very joyful procession.
Yeah.
They're playing bongos, and there's like I don't know if some use trumpets, but it's like a ram's horn that gets blown, and and then do they go home and have a celebration?
Generally, you'll go and you'll have a feast afterwards. If you're in Israel or in South Africa, you'll go and all your friends and your family or whoever's around will come and join you, and there'll be prayers and speeches and festivities.
What does it now mean for that boy of 13? Is he now initiated into manhood?
That's it. Yeah, he's initiated into manhood, and now he's expected to think for himself and to fulfill the obligations and the responsibilities of being a Jew. And it's, I guess, free choice. From there, you make a decision for yourself which path you choose to take.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What else would you like to, just because sometimes we hear of a bar mitzvah, but I've been exposed to it now much more. But people watching this program, perhaps for the first time, they've heard something about this. I didn't realize that boys at 13 and girls at 12.
Right. Well, I think that for me, that's the message. I think, as I mentioned, we've got a lot in common as Jews and Christians. And I think for us, and yet at the same time, historically, there has been a great degree of suspicion, just because of the nature of politics that comes with the world of the Jews or the world of the Christians. And I think that it's almost our responsibility to sit and to talk and to respect one another's positions, yet to learn about one another's positions, because that can make our reaching out to one another and our friendship that much more stronger and that much more relevant.
One thing that always impresses me as the program draws to a close is that the books of Isaiah, and they found many of the other Old Testament, but the books completely preserved were the books of Isaiah, and they sort of built this It's like a dome.
The Dead Sea Scrolls.
The Dead Sea Scrolls,
Right,
and it's
right.
like in a dome. I'm just trying to, so that people watching the program, it's like in a jar. It's built like a jar.
That's right.
And they don't have air conditioning in it. It might dissolve the rolls, and then they squirt water on it. And it's a lovely, the temperature inside is great. But now, I was privileged to be with you at the release when Israel said, what is the greatest present Israel has given the world? The Bible, and the release or the initiating of the Bible House, the Bible Valley in Jerusalem. Just tell us about a minute about that.
Well, that's a very exciting project. Under the auspices or the support of the Prime Minister's Office and the Ministry of Diaspora and Public Diplomacy, there's a project that's rolling out around the world. Jewish and Christian communities are being part of writing their verses, writing the Bible on scrolls and in their language. And people like myself and you are part of that, whereby each country will write the Bible in their local language, and then all these Bibles will be housed in a museum in Jerusalem.
And that's incredible.
It's a very exciting initiative and very exciting project, yeah.
Ben, thank you. It was great having you on the program. We know a little bit about the Zionist community in South Africa.
Wonderful.
En liewe kyker, in Jerusalem, apart van waar hulle die perkamentrolle van Jesaja bewaar, gaan daar nou 'n Bybelhuis wees, en Suid-Afrika gaan in ons 11 nasionale tale gaan daar 'n perkamentrolle wees in Israel oor die Bybel of die boeke van die Bybel. Wat 'n wonderlike gedagte. Mag die Here jou seën tot ons mekaar weer op hierdie program ontmoet. Die Here seën jou.